Welcome back to Finding Flow, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with leaders shaping the future, not just through what they do, but how they live, lead, and flow through life. I'm your host, Carl McDonald, and today we're diving deep into the intersection of fashion, data, technology, and equity with someone who has been pushing the boundaries for over a decade. Our guest today is Jessica Couch. She's a top retail expert as seen in Forbes, a business intelligence consultant, fashion tech innovator, and the founder behind Luxor and Finch. Whether it's advising Fortune 500s like Nordstrom and Amazon or building inclusive ecosystems in retail, Jessica is rewriting a playbook on how brands can be both profitable and human centered. So, a huge welcome, Jessica. I'm so excited to have you here, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to talk about my favorite topic, fashion tech and human-centered design.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's dive right in. And I suppose usually I like to start with the journey sort of from the beginning. So you've blended fashion, tech, and data in such a unique way. Where did the story begin for you? And can you tell me a little bit about its evolution?
Yeah, so the story began for me as a child. I love fashion. I had an aunt who used to make us custom clothing, and she taught me how to sew. And she taught me basically about fit and sizing and all of these things. And she made clothing for
Yeah.
my family and other people. So I've always had an interest in wearing custom clothing and just how much fashion kind of influences your personality, your mood, all of those things. So I kind of took on a hobby and I did my undergraduate at NC State in fashion product development. That gave me a different sense of the industry. Of course, being in North Carolina, NC State provides you with an overview of the supply chain. So, one of the benefits of going to school there, you see every piece of machinery that exists to go from spinning a thread to scanning a body to getting products out in the store. And that in itself helped me to think bigger about the industry
Mm,
and to think bigger about contributions towards it. Even the body scanner made me think, wow, like there is a lot out here with tech that we don't know about. One of the most
mm,
interesting things that happened in undergrad is we got to see how the firefighter suits were made and how all of the technology that is used behind it is there to keep the firefighters safe and smart. And so even though the firefighter garment has nothing to do with like the fashion industry, the idea of incorporating smart textiles and usability and utility into clothing really shaped my mind. And so
mm.
I went off on a journey. I owned a store. I worked in retail. I did all of those things. And many years later, I decided to do my master's at Cornell. And so Cornell
Mhm.
allowed me to build the master's program that I wanted to. So I focused heavily on entrepreneurship, on business ideals, on engineering, and understanding technology so that I could jump and get ahead of the wave. Prior to that, I was working in New York trying to figure out if fashion tech was really going to be a vibe. So I'll back you up a little bit. When I got to New York, I had a store for 3 years and I was selling clothing and using social media before social commerce became a process that was smooth. So back
Mm.
then, you were just kind of like throwing out wide nets and using Facebook and using Instagram, but it wasn't connected to Shopify in the same way that it is
Yeah.
now. So it didn't have the same functionality. But what I noticed is that when I put people who looked like my target audience in the clothing, it sold more and I got way less returns. So it didn't matter if it didn't fit the person exactly like the model because the model looked more, I guess, accessible to people, it managed their expectations. And so I
Mm.
begin to think if this is a phenomenon going on with my small online store, is this actually a phenomenon that's going to happen across the industry? And if so, do we have any technology that can bridge the gap? So when I went to New York, I went as a business owner starting over and I went and took internships. I slept on my sister's couch because I was trying to figure out is there any indication that the greater industry needed technology to integrate? I worked for Tracy Reese at the time in her production room. And what I noticed, the same things I do now, I noticed so many gaps in the process. It took so long to get, your pattern to China for it to come back, to get a sample that's absolutely incorrect in the wrong fabric, to have to send it off paper wise using FedEx to get it back, to put it on the fit model. For the information that's happening in the fitting never makes it to marketing. So we're not even using the terminologies to manage the expectations of the consumer, to watching the brand get many returns and then watching the brand grow, but they're not really targeting the people who are built like the fit model or There's got gaps in the production process. Everything is done on paper, which is a fire hazard, but it also makes it
Mm,
cumbersome when you're looking for certain things. You have to be hyper organized, and there was nothing modular about the design or pattern updating system. So you couldn't just quickly update a pattern and it go back in time and make sure that anytime you pull that pattern from now on, it has been corrected in size greatly or perfectly. And so it was just little things like that that I noticed, and I was like, this is an industry that is prime for technology to integrate, and I want to get ahead of it. So
mm.
I went into grad school with a wealth of experience and high expectations that this should be easy. You just let brands know about the technology and boom, they'll implement it and we will have the most advanced, industry in the world. And that is not what happened. So that was how I started that journey.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And I suppose, was there a moment when you realized, um, do you have like a specific moment where you realized this is what I'm meant for? Like this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is what I want to do?
You know, since undergrad, I wanted to take all of my knowledge and obviously make something of it and
Mhm,
keep adding to it. And I knew in undergrad when I took a trip to Egypt and I came back and it influenced my senior collection that there's a connection that I have with this industry that I wasn't quite sure how I was going to find my way in
mm,
it, but it was absolutely something I didn't want to let go. When I came
mhm,
out of grad school and I saw all the gaps, I just felt so convicted to be the person to fill those gaps because of how I know how I'm trained to think and I
mm,
understand solutions and being solution oriented. So I don't know if it was one time, but it's many times across the journey where whether I was getting paid the amount I wanted to or not, I woke up every day excited to learn,
mm,
excited to research, excited to write. In fact, I began writing because I was gathering so much data and information. I needed a way to synthesize it and keep up with it. So I wrote and I put it online on like LinkedIn and blogs, and people got really interested in it. And those are the moments that reminded me like, I love this. I love the problem solving aspect. I love the opportunity to go digital. I love seeing all these problems and how to solve them. But it has grown. I will tell you, a couple years ago, I was at a point where I was like, do I even love this anymore? Because
mm,
technology adoption is so slow. It can go wrong a lot of times. Like I'm sure people saw how NFTs distracted everybody from technology that would have been useful. And it happened to the fashion industry where fashion went crazy for NFTs, which absolutely makes no sense because fashion is about wearing physical clothing. So over investing into non-fungible tokens for fashion does not connect with the end consumer in the way that made sense. But you could not tell investors that at the time. Everyone got excited and everyone wasted so much time and money. So, it ebbs and flows, but I've always felt like this is where I need to be.
So, so I also wanted to ask, how do you personally define flow in your work or creativity? When do you feel the most in your element, I suppose?
Yeah. And my work flow for me is probably when I'm in a state of research with a purpose.
Mhm,
So I often find flow when I'm in the middle of trying to solve a problem and I'm synthesizing a lot of information. To me, it's flow because problem solving is not always linear. And when you're bringing in a lot of information to help you make a decision on how to solve a problem, and you're considering what your client is giving you, which it could be their gaps, or it could be their workflows, or it could be, how their business is set up and where they're failing. And then you're considering all the possible ways to resolve it. And then there's
mhm,
this moment when you begin to align the needs of the client with all of the research that you're doing, with all of the possible ways, and you start to creatively formulate a way to solve that problem. That gets me in flow because that's fun for me. I find myself in flow when I'm solving problems. I find myself in flow when I'm doing research. And it's for me just a calm sense of understanding that brings in the right results that also kind of takes me on a path. So, flow for me is necessary. It is my creative expression. Once I can understand restraints and constraints, I can build from that. And my creative process is taking these constraints, understanding like the material and resources we have, and creating something beautiful from it. And I do think for me, when I was younger, I used to have these states of flow for painting because I did a
mhm,
lot of art. And painting puts me in almost a trance state where I'd have an
mhm,
idea of what I wanted to create. But once you get kind of like the colors on the palette, once you get to the canvas, you enter this different state where yeah, you have the idea, but you allow the idea to come to life. And in that idea coming to life, you often get something better than what you started out with. It's the
Mm.
framework of what you prepared for. But my state would take me where I take what I prepared for, and now we're going to build something better. And I would not stop painting until I got to a place where I was like, okay, now I feel like it's complete. And so
Yeah.
I think flow is necessary. I think that when you can turn your work or what you're doing or any moment into almost a meditative state and it's
Mm.
pushing you, I think that's a great place to be in. And that's how I identify flow.
Okay, I love that. And you often say fashion has a data problem. Can you unpack that a bit for us?
Absolutely. So, fashion involves a complex supply chain that is usually located all over the globe. And
Hmm.
each part of the supply chain is its own business. And unfortunately, because each part of that supply chain can be its own business and not often vertically integrated, there is a ton of silos. And
Mm.
so, data that happens in one part of the supply chain most of the time never makes it to the other parts that would be necessary to create a more efficient supply chain altogether. And the way that fashion is set up, companies are not trying to think about overall efficiency in the same way that they're thinking about the bottom line. They are yet to connect that the more efficient we are, the more that data can move succinctly through each part of our processes and can be shared, identified, and utilized unanimously, the more profit we create, the more loyal customers we can have, the more we can lessen our waste, and the more we can optimize. That's just not how fashion thinks. And when I've
Hmm.
gone into these rooms and talked to executives, managers, and directors and VPs and all of these people, the kickback is usually, well, that's just not how we've done it.
Mm.
And so you can tell that there's an issue. So I'll give you an example. In a design room, a designer creates a design of some sort. The tech designer then interprets that design and makes a technical spec, which is like a blueprint for how we're actually going to make this. And it comes with, you know, information about what materials, the sizes, all of that information. So then you send that off to a factory. Now, a factory has that information and a factory has to produce what they think is the right garment. Now, in the past, just that process alone, you could see where data could be lost because there
Mm.
aren't too many checks and balances all the time. By the time you get it to the factory, if the designer wanted to change, if the tech designer realized that perhaps the technical pack isn't correct, we're already at the factory. The factory is going to send you something back. And let's say they put it on that fit model, it doesn't fit right. We all have to adjust it. Because data wasn't being shared instantaneously, those processes took so long to get done that the run rate from going from concept to actual design that can be in a store just increase for really no reason. Now, let's say that during your fitting, you notice that, hey, we have a fit model who is built with smaller shoulders, wider hips. And on this fit model, this particular clothing needed to be adjusted in the waist, period. That information does not go to the marketing team or to the e-commerce team when they're writing the copy to say, hey, this dress is best for this shape. And if you are this shape, you can expect this fit. If you're not this shape, you may not, this dress may not be flattering. The data and the information that happen right there in that fitting doesn't always go to the people that's necessary, even though the end goal is to get your product to the consumer and get the consumer to buy it and understand and self-identify which products are best for them. And that's just like obviously a general example of how data is not being passed along. Now, let's say we get to the point of sale, and let's say that your product is now in a store. And what the store associate might notice is that five women went into the fitting room. Each one of them were all a size 8, but very different shapes and heights. Out
Mm.
of those five women, only two bought the dress. And out of the two that bought the dress, one had to try on multiple sizes. All of that information is necessary for our customers coming in and out of the store, but no one is tracking that information most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, there's technology tools like RFID that'll tell you dress A went from the rack into the fitting room 5 times. Dress B, which is might be a smaller size, went into the fitting room next, but dress C, which was the larger size, actually made it to the cash wrap and is now home with the customer. Even having that amount of information to just study and talk to your team about, you could prepare your team to say, hey, we know that whenever this dress comes in our store, People have to size up or down. So when someone wants this dress, make sure you tell them in the fitting room they're going to have to size up or down to manage their expectations. But
Yeah.
sometimes none of that happens. So fashion in itself is not a smart process. You go in and out of stores all the time. People barely greet you, but they don't know what you have in your wardrobe, what you're willing to buy, what you tried on, what worked, what didn't. Sometimes when a sales associate, and I've been a sales associate, so I've spent
Mm.
10,000 hours in fitting rooms with people crying about tags and arbitrary sizing and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But none of the information that I collected ever made it to our morning meetings. So if, even me working on a sales floor and I was a top seller because I could properly identify which products would fit best on people, no one's saying, hey, let's take all of the data for everything that everybody tried on this month and let's look and try to identify some trends so we know how to talk to our customer. And even if you talk to the customer, let's send that back up to the brand. So now the brand has the information so that when they're deploying their product across different stores and in different places, they have information to manage the expectation of the customer. That's the type of data that's missing that would make fashion smart. And that's the type of issues that create, 30 and 40% returns, billions of dollars of returns, billions of dollars of dead inventory, because it's a mismatch between, the products that are being made and the people that want to take it home.
That is so true. It makes so much sense. It's like everything is so separate. And if all
Yes,
that information was like together, it would just there'd be so much, like you say, so much more data to make better decisions and to learn so much more about what's actually happening.
exactly.
Um, no, I really appreciate that. And you wrote about practical AI in fashion. So tools like Raspberry AI, Diffusely, body data. What
Yeah.
excites you most about these emerging technologies?
What excites me most about the emerging technologies within the AI scope is creating more ease in the workflows for designers, like with the
Mhm.
Raspberry AI. It doesn't quite replace the designer because you can't really replace the human eye yet when it comes to fashion. There's just
Mhm.
not enough information in the LLM to really account for the design process, but it can help to make the design process easier and even streamline it in ways that we haven't. So maybe now it's easier to recreate products that sold through well without exhausting your design team because perhaps they're limited in their scope of fabrication or limited in their scope of design and silhouettes. But with AI, it helps to advance that. Companies like Diffusely for brands. I remember very early on when you have an e-commerce, you have to do a lot of photo shoots. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of editing. But now with
Mm.
Diffusely, you can easily replace a model with someone who looks closer to another demographic that you're trying to target. And this obviously doesn't take away from the need for diversity amongst models and things like that. And obviously it doesn't replace when I speak of diversity, I also mean body types. But
Mm.
if you have a target audience, you can understand that people are more likely to buy things when they find similarities and parity in it. So something as simple as shifting the ethnicity on a model can help get your product to a wider audience, which is really great for you when your goal is to rid yourself of dead inventory. And then with like body data and things, there have been so many scan events that happen where they collected a ton of body measurement information so that we can begin to understand what body types look like at certain heights and weights. And if your waist is this, what is the average hip ratio for certain um, kind of body types that I think we're going to finally get to a place where clothing brands can make products that fit better and understand their target market better, understand their body types, and kind of match supply and demand in a way that hasn't. I'm also excited about agentic AI within internal
Mhm.
businesses to create a
Yeah.
little more data sharing, a little more communication, and automate some of the processes that perhaps usually involve too much human error. I think that'll be great. In fashion, we can't quite replace people quite yet, simply
Mhm.
because it's so many nuances that you need a person there. But we can have people work on more meaningful tasks instead of just, like doing quant work where you should be kind of maybe having a better understanding of what customers need and synthesizing that information. So I'm totally excited about AI adoption across fashion when it's done well.
And
Yeah.
so um, you've been vocal about fashion needing to cut waste and overproduction. What are some of the most promising solutions you see on the horizon?
Ooh, now that's a great question. Um, Promising solutions. Okay. So I think that RFID will help to change the game because once you tag an item and we begin to attach metadata and information to that item, we can start to build a reservoir of information and understand products in a way that we haven't. Like
Mhm.
the earlier example I gave about how a product moves around the floor, that's really good information to know once a product is created so that brands can be informed on the back end about, hey, this product just doesn't work for our audience. But like for instance, for me, I think that sustainability is about matching people to product on a one-to-one, and it
Mm.
always has been that for me. Obviously, fashion supply and demand is totally out of whack. And so one of the solutions that I'm working on now is a peer-to-peer platform that allows people to shop by their body type and their style with other individuals who are basically trying on clothing for them so there can be a community. But under that, what we're really looking to do is attach enough metadata to every item that exists in the world so that we can start telling brands exactly why or why not their products are selling. And we can stop people from overproducing. Because right
Mm.
now, when people are doing their production numbers and size runs and the quantities in which they're doing things in, it's just based off of this is what we do all the time. This is how many products we need to sell on average. This is what we need in our warehouse. But that is one of the most inefficient ways to create products. Every product should be created with the end person in mind, down to the T of where they are, how many they'll buy, and how many times they'll purchase an item. Right now, because there's not a lot of data, we don't have that. So, one of the solutions I'm working on is kind of building fashion's own neural network of human input, size and fit, and product data. Because once we have enough information, we can then begin to help brands understand their production on a level that doesn't exist now, and we can create a more efficient supply chain to get things done, to move things around regionally, and to target customers in a way that's not just casting a wide net and hoping people fall into it.
Okay, that's amazing. And you wear so many hats, founder, strategist, advisor. How do you stay?
Yeah, so I stay grounded by constantly learning. So I go to conferences, I do research, and that keeps me grounded because no matter what I assume or what I think, I like to look at the data, I like to look at the numbers, I like to know what's happening. And sometimes you make assumptions about technology and tools or how the industry will go, but until you actually see the numbers or you go out there or you conduct studies, you never really know what's going on. So for me to stay grounded, I read a lot. I attend conferences, I listen to people, I listen to customers, I listen to clients, and I'm always trying to figure out what will work with the shifting customer behavior that we see.
Okay, great. And when you look back on your career so far, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess I'm proud that I didn't let it go because a lot of the things that I learned in undergrad are still relevant to this day. And had I not had the experience to learn or intern or do certain things like have a store, which a lot of people are like, well, how do you go from having a store to not having one? But every step on my journey gave me enough information and confidence and understanding that it pushed me to the next phase. So I'm really happy to not have given up and to not have switched careers and to have saw this through because now we're in the perfect time for fashion technology. But just 3 to 4 years ago, it was a disaster. When COVID
Mm,
hit, for instance, in my agency, I lost a ton of clients because nobody was physically shopping. So there's no
yeah.
need for, any type of technology or studies like that. And it was really difficult. But now we're in a place where fashion technology is becoming such a buzzword. People are
Mm,
curious about it. People are implementing it. There's more studies. There's more brands. Some of the brands that I saw early on in my career are now bigger, more funded, and super important to our industry. So it's been great to grow with it, to not give up and kind of develop the grit and tenacity to see it through because now I feel like we're going to see some really great changes that I'm super excited about.
okay, great. And so thinking about the future, what are you dreaming about building, or what's sort of exciting you at the moment about what's next?
I'm so excited about building our platform, the one that I mentioned earlier. It's called Lux AI. I'm
Yeah.
excited we're going to like deploy on Shopify to help merchants first to kind of use social proof and size and fit, mix it all together. But I'm excited about building an LLM that has to do with like fashion and fit and style and preference so that we can finally get this technology out and watch the industry benefit greatly. Fashion is a $3 trillion industry, but it's also the number two pollutant in the world, which is embarrassing to me because it's like it's there's so many things about the industry that are so superficial. But I
Mhm.
do think that with technology integration and with what we are building, we can actually change retail. We can change this sustainability, and we can change how people interact with fashion so that this industry, it doesn't have to be so detrimental to the world, and it can be better all around, which, hopefully we can get done.
Jessica, this conversation has been like gold. It's been such amazing perspective, and I really appreciate you sharing all of this. I'm sure everyone watching is gonna benefit a lot from watching this.
I hope
Um,
so.
so, so yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining, and I will speak to you soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. You as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.